Greetings! This is Joelle, and I am the Viberarian. This is the Psychic Inside Show, and you are listening on the Blog Talk radio platform on the Viberary Collective Network. I know that's a lot to kind of take in, but I'm here every Tuesday having these conversations with people as part of the collective information sharing that is part of my mission. Now, I believe that everyone is psychic and you just may not realize it. So by having these stories on where I get to connect with amazing people, my hope is that you will hear something that gives you that aha moment and turns the light bulb on for you so that you can recognize something that may resonate to let you know that your gifts and abilities have been in you all along. Now, if you want to connect on this show this evening, the call-in number is 646-787-8436. If you're listening on the line, just hit the 1 key, and that lets me know, the hashtag 1, #1, depending on what generation you're from. Press that, and that lets me know that you want to come on the air to ask a question. Now, sometimes on our shows, my guests provide readings. This evening, we are not going to be engaging in readings, but if you have a question about my guest and the journey that she will be sharing, please do feel free to chime in and make a comment, question, join the conversation. I've got somebody who's got their hand up already that wants to come on the line, so we'll have to check in and see what they want to talk about a little bit later. So out there on social media, I'm connected with the Good Vibe Tribe, and these are the folks that are of similar frequency and vibration. I aim for that vibration to be that of love, light, and joy. You can connect with me on social media at The Viberarian, and that's THEVIBE for energy. RARIAN. Now, if you're looking for us on YouTube, that is at The Viberary. It sounds like library, but again, that E is in the middle of it all. All these shows are available on replay on the YouTube channel. You can also find us on Amazon Music under podcasts and iTunes, TuneIn and Stitcher, and a lot of the other platforms where you would subscribe to content like this. We're everywhere. So please do check out these conversations if you haven't been able to catch the live. Now, I love this because I'm a librarian at heart, which means I love information. I love to ask questions. I always get teased by my friends because they say, oh, you get to just be nosy for no reason. Well, there is a reason to these questions and the conversations that I have, and I feel so blessed to be able to sit down for this conversation on a weekly basis and meet the most amazing people. My guest this evening is actually part of that Good Vibe Tribe that I talked to you about. I say that because everything is connected. And when you meet somebody who you just really love, and then they tell you, you know what, here's somebody that I think you need to contact because I really love them, I pay attention to things like that. So personal referrals of people who think highly of each other, who recommend each other both professionally and personally, I put a lot of stock in that. And my guest this evening, the person who I was recommended was Cathryn Munden. And I love Cathryn. She's been on the show before, and she's been my coach in helping me develop some of my gifts and abilities. And then she said, you know what, I think you need to talk to Amy because she's like my coach. So, you know how they say a therapist needs to go see a therapist and a doctor needs to go see a doctor. My guest this evening is like the coach's coach for Cathryn. My guest is Amy Cathryn, and she goes by the moniker The Amy Cathryn, kind of like the Ohio State University, meaning there's only just one. And so, Amy, welcome to the Psychic Inside Show this evening.
Yay, I'm so happy to be on. Thank you so much for having me on this evening. I go by Amy Cathryn. But it's the at Amy Cathryn on Instagram, so you don't have to call me the Amy Cathryn in person.
Okay. We don't need to do like the Ohio thing. You know, I know that's not Ohio thing, but no, but it is very distinguishing. And for those of you who are active on social media, you know, what I know of Amy prior to this interview is pretty minimal. I know there's somebody who I values her, and I've been connecting and kind of watching you, Amy, on social media. And one thing that I like is that you are out there teaching some things. You're dropping little nuggets of wisdom that are really relevant to people who might be engaging in spiritual counseling with other people, what it looks like to be ethical in your practices of giving spiritual guidance to people, very practical and confident in your delivery and what you're talking about. So I understand you had like over 10 years now experience being a professional psychic worker. Do you resonate with the term psychic?
Yes, I do. I am a full-time psychic medium. I started on this journey back in, I believe it was 2006. It was right after I graduated high school. And that was when I really started, and that was in the realm of MySpace for all the Gen Zers out there. That was pre-Facebook, and when Facebook did come on, you had to prove you were member of a college for you to even like get an actual Facebook account. And so I was in a tough situation because we had some bad juju in my house. Let's say some bad funk, and I kept having nightmares, and I kept like hearing things, and I was in the basement. And that was a long story there. We was kind of in the bottom part of the house, which we didn't hang out in normally. And I was like, okay, I know I'm not going crazy. And, doctors can't explain this. Like, I'm going online, he's like, WebMD's like, everything's cancer. He's like, no, this isn't that. This is something else. And I'm like, okay, so I go to spirituality, and that was super nervous because I grew up, I like to call it turbo Christian, back in like the middle of nowhere, Alabama. And so it was like all this stuff is like, this stuff is of the devil. And I'm like, no, there's something more out there. So that's kind of got me started into psionics, and then eventually learned about Reiki and got my Reiki Master certification. And then I was learning about Tarot as well, long before Reiki actually. And then eventually moved to Atlanta, and then it kind of just exploded from there because there's a much larger spiritual community here. And then in Alabama, there's like nothing over there. And took Carl Woodall's psychic development class, and I'm also a shaman under the Shamanic Path to Awaken Living, and I am also in the process of coming up with my own psychic development course as well. And I'm an ordained minister.
Well, as I say, your resume was like quite lengthy in terms of like what you do. And as I thought, you are young, you know what I'm saying, in terms of youth. And so it sounds like how do you go from turbo Christian in rural Alabama to recognizing bad juju in an environment? Like, what does that bridge look like? When you were young, were you sensitive to spirits and energy?
Yeah, there's a history of issues in my family, and I've come to realize that, everybody's psychic. I'm not some special little snowflake. That's what I like to tell my clients. Everybody has this. I don't like to call it a gift. It's more of a skill. Just like you go to the gym and you work out and build muscles, it's a type of muscle on a metaphysical level. But some people are naturally gifted at it, just like some people are natural gym rats, and some people are naturally just inclined to music or math or art. It's the same thing. Some people are just naturally inclined. And a lot of people who have a tendency of having mental illness or substance abuse or some sort of issue or trauma that runs in their family. It's usually because the people before them, the forebears, were too sensitive to it and tried to overcompensate with, numbing it or with absorbing too much, and they didn't know the psychic hygiene they needed to clear it out, in addition to, what their doctor would recommend or seeing a therapist. Like, they aren't mutually exclusive is what I believe. And my mother was a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic and an alcoholic, and physically and emotionally abusive to both me and my autistic little sister. And growing up, I had to grow up real fast. And there was a lot of recognizing that there was more there. And when I was a teenager, I started hearing the voices, and part of this sort of foray into metaphysics was, I don't want to end up like my mother. I don't want to end up, hearing the crazy. And I was like, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm going to stay grounded. And I feel like that was a huge part of what helped me keep my sanity, and making sure that I didn't absorb and assume that just because I heard something in my head that I would automatically own it. And I felt that sort of like refusal to own it kind of helped me keep my bearings until I found the right mentors. And I did find a mentor that helped me sort of get out of my mother's house, and that she helped me for a time, and that helped me kind of get okay with the idea of tarot. And then I was also, I went to school for graphic design too, and it was a graphic design job that got me to Atlanta. But I think the real thing was like Spirit saying, hey, this is what we've lured you to Atlanta, where all the cool kids are and all the cool psychic spiritual stuff is, to get you out of Alabama. And it was really interesting how, like, where I worked was less than 2 miles from the big psychic fair in Roswell.
Okay.
But you can't make that up. And I know you talked about being the librarian for the Viberary. My first job was a page at a library.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I love libraries too. But it was basically coming into a place of, what if this is something outside the realms of physical explanation? I know that I'm not going crazy. I know that there's something here and I can't explain it with science. I knew that I would have dreams that were precognitive. I was an empath before I knew the meaning of the word, and sometimes my parents would listen to their child, their 7, 8-year-old daughter, say, that guy's bad, don't listen to him. And it would turn out to be like some sort of Ponzi scheme VHS video. Remember VHS videos? Where those things go? And just little bit by little bit coming over, and I think it was the Reiki class, because when you get Reiki attuned, it's a massive sort of awakening. That really helped me start to honor these gifts more. And I think what helped me in Atlanta was, the validating tarot experiences, and then taking the psychic development class, the Sandy Anastasi class with Carl Woodall. And that was simply because I started seeing people who crossed over, and I was freaking out because I was told my whole life that was mediumship, is of the devil. And it's like, no, all gifts come from God, or whatever source, whatever you want to call it. So that really helped me just go, I'm here. This is what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna let sort of Spirit guide me. And so I started doing the readings professionally in 2016. I started doing readings out of the Blue Barn. And then I eventually, I hopped from one graphic design job to another, which in hindsight, if for those of you out there who felt like you've hopped from job to job and you're just like, why does this job not fit when I try so hard and it just doesn't work out? It's because I'm meant for something bigger. And I realized that I was a square peg trying to fit into a round hole with all that. And the universe provided me an opportunity to get a job that was part-time, that paid really well in the graphic design field, so that I could start doing this stuff and building networking and out of the storefront, with this stuff. And that eventually landed me at Forever in a Day. I met Carolyn Mondin at the Open Mind Center. We worked there together for a little bit, and then moved on to Forever in a Day, and now that's where I work on Tuesdays and Fridays. And I do this also on my website, but it's about trusting Spirit to help you find your path. We like to strategize, especially for us, like female business owners too. It's like they're very tech savvy, very, very strategic, and just got to go, okay, this is the plan, this is the objective, I got to rationalize. And when reality likes to hit us sideways, the spirit likes to hit us sideways and come at us sideways, they're just like, well, that plan didn't work. and spirit's like, nada, you got to trust us, you know, we're spirit. We co-create this universe together. And the more spiritual you are, the more spirit asks us to trust that process. And there was a point where I just had to sort of surrender. And I was like, how am I going to pay my bills? And spirit's like, we know what your bills are. Trust us. And I'm like freaking out, and I finally let go of the graphic design job. The universe set me up to have to you know, give my 2 weeks and cut it off. And then I'm just like freaking out. And then I do the math, and they're like, honey, this has been paying the bills the whole time. Why are you freaking out? The spiritual stuff. So it's about trusting the process, and that's where I am with this. So there's always that tug of war with the inner, I like to call the ego monster, as John Edwards, you know, put it. But yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
I would say you must be psychic or something, because you are repeating like things in my conversations in the last 48 hours. I love how everything aligns, because two things that you were mentioning, I'll circle back to the other one in a little bit, but firstly, of the experience of thinking that you're, you know, crazy. And, you know, for all of our listeners who are listening, I'm not meaning to denigrate true mental health issues, right? Because I'm a big believer in therapy. I'm a big believer in we can function where we are healthily. But for a lot of folks, like the presence of a voice in your head that is not malevolent, hopefully, or in the case of a couple people who recently I've been having conversation with, the appearance of like an angelic spirit or a being that is definitely not in human form in front of your face. It can be very challenging when you've been doing your meditation and trying to, you know, get your yoga on, and then all of a sudden you're becoming clairvoyant and having visions or dreams or actual things that are challenging what you have come to believe that reality is. It can be very, very frightening for people. And so you talked about like how your mother with alcohol and, you know, paranoid schizophrenia and like hearing voices or suppressing your abilities because they are extreme and will get you a diagnosis if you begin to try to talk to people about that. So, you know, you've mentioned that you do mediumship. And so for our listeners who may not be familiar, could you describe then what the experience of mediumship versus like a psychic reading where you're connecting with in other ways? Like, how do you look at the ways that you're doing it?
Well, it's all channeled. So all the good juju or good I like to say I use the word juju a lot. So all the good stuff comes from the crown chakra and the 8th chakra, which is about 6 inches to a foot above the crown, depending on which article you read. And that's all divine, and that's all love-based, and it's channeled. A lot of psychics will make the mistake of like just tapping into empathy. And though empathy does give you information, it's only existing information, whereas channeled information gives you divine clarity on like the bigger picture of what's going on from a love-based place in a way that the client needs exactly. Mediumship is slightly different from that frequency. Divine energy, I like to kind of joke with my clients, divine energy is pop rock, and then people who gloss over are R&B. That's two different radio stations. You know, they're both music, but they sound different. And so it's like I try to separate pop rock from R&B because that way I'm not getting confused at which song I'm listening to. So I like to separate the two stations, so to speak. And then with angelic energy, divine gods and goddesses, ascended masters, saints, depending on the client and their belief systems will come forward. So a Catholic's just probably going to have angels and saints, Mother Mary probably, or Jesus. Somebody who's Hindu is probably going to have a lot of gods, Hindu gods and goddesses, or Kemetic or pagan, etc. And that's all very high vibrating, and I definitely go and remove any of, I try to remove as much of my ego as possible and just be a straw and a channel and back out and let spirit tell them what they need to hear. And it's just, as much as the more humble I am, the better it is. And it's very sort of divine, and my voice kind of gets a little bit higher like this. Like, normally I'm kind of like this with my voice. So, like, when I'm, like, doing readings, it's like, I'm super kind of like that girl, like, oh, like, I don't know, they just raise my voice up a little bit. And then people who crossed over are really funny in the sense that they show me a lot of visuals, and it feels like I can close my eyes and I see somebody there, and they show me through visualization, through clairvoyance, and clairsentient, depending on the person who's crossed over. So if that person was a chatty Cathy and she loved to talk and she talked your ear off, then she's going to come through pretty strongly with the clairaudience, which is the hearing. Like, I'm just going to pick her up like HBO. Somebody who is an artist is going to come through with a lot of visuals and show me visual things. Somebody who's very left-brained is probably going to come through very claircognizantly, which is just, I'll just know or get an instant download from them, or they'll show me like certain symbols. And they'll show me that they're present in the physical realm, and they'll sort of show me their location is like next to the client, right or left, depending on their relationship to the client. Whereas angels, I feel like I have to look up to talk to them. And the energy is always love-based, and I always do clearing and meditation before the reading to make sure it's as clean and as viable as possible, because it's my goal to make sure that the client has the best reading possible from me, and I try to work on myself, and I learn from each client. It's like clients are our teachers as much as we tell them messages. They teach us things even when they don't know.
It's a mutual exchange, right? It's very interesting because I think when people begin to explore their senses, right, if you realize that you're empathic or clairsentient, and you realize that you're feeling the people in the room when you go in the room, and that it's making you tired, and you have these tingles whenever a person's like very much in your feeling body. You mentioned like the regular conversation that lets you kind of know when to approach a person, say at work, if a meeting's going to be successful, when to not engage, when there's tension. Most of us are like becoming more finely developed in our empathy body. But when you talk about the higher than conversation, so that would be like, you realize the person is mad and angry, but then the higher version gives you a download or awareness why they might be mad or angry. Is that how that distinction kind of works?
Yeah, and empathy is great for healing work too. I'm not dissing empathy in the slightest. It's when we use it to glean information. Like, I can empathically, if I sit with a person long enough, I can describe the inside of their house. But that also gets into third-party information. So, and that's kind of, for me, I like to call it the peeping Tom information. And I know this is a little bit of a controversy, but I'm strict no-no when it comes to third-party information, just because it's empathic, but it's invasive, because the third party didn't give us permission to talk about their personal life. It's like, I wouldn't go and, like, bust in your house and rummage through your underwear or sock drawer. And like, just because, like, I could knock down that door doesn't mean I should. There's laws against that, right? Right. Like, you have a right to defend yourself and your property. So it's like, unlike that, like, in the metaphysical community, there isn't really the metaphysical police or the metaphysical Better Business Bureau. So we kind of got to be on top of ourselves. Plus, it's, like, important for the client to know that their healing starts within themselves. Closure when it comes to another person, like if somebody's coming to me and they're like, when's my ex-boyfriend going to come back to me? I know he's in a different country and he's, like, got a fiance, but I'm convinced he's going to come back to me. It's like, let's talk about therapy, and where do you need closure? Because you don't need a third party. You don't need that other person or to know their personal information to get closure or healing. I can tell you about your karma with that person or why you felt stuck there, but you got to honor their energy, right? We got to respect this craft because it's a huge, powerful tool. And empathy is really great for having to understand, like, if there's an issue with someone's internal body or their organs or what's going on with their chakras. It's also excellent for Reiki. But when it comes to the channeled information from guides, it's better for me. I try to talk to them empathically as little as possible. And you're going to have clients that are stuck in their ego or that are resistant to what spirit has to say, and it's usually because they're clinging to something with, or a label or an issue with the ego, and or an idea that, you know, this is right, or, you know, that is wrong, or I need you to say this just to validate what I'm feeling, when that is lower vibrating and not what their guides say. And their guides will come in from a very love-based place and say, you know, this is the cycle you're stuck in, this is how and why the pattern's repeating, and this is how you solve it. And I've given well over 1,000 readings, and I have yet to see that the reading is about an issue externally, and it's more about our internal perception of reality. Because we hear the term, I'm sure you've heard this term, as above, so below. And that's only 33% of the whole saying by Hermes Trismegistus, and that is as above, so below. As within, so without. As the universe, so the soul. Yes. And that, a lot of people think, oh, you know, I need this person in my life to be happy. I need this thing in my life. I need this amount of money, this label, this career. I need this person to do that thing for me that they're not going to do. How dare they? I can't believe. You know, it's all about giving your power away to another person, when in reality it's about your perception of the issue. So the universe is like, this is where you're stuck on continually creating this reality based on free will. Because free will is the law of the universe, and the two-split theory sort of hints at that. You know, hint, quantum mechanics scientists, you know, you guys got to catch up. You know, they're still hung over with the objective universe theory, and that thing died out back when Einstein was alive. So this is all about recognizing that we co-create our reality, and universe and spirit always reminds us of how much we're in control by simply recognizing where we've given our power away, or we feel stuck on an issue. Or define ourselves by that issue, like being left versus right, right versus wrong, or, you know, you're that religion over here and I'm this religion over here, and creating this illusion. And it's not, it's all an illusion.
You know, what's interesting is about giving the power away. You use that phrase. I can't tell you how many times I've had discussion with people who are like, oh, I don't read horoscopes. I'm not going to let somebody else dictate my life. You know, to them, that's giving a power away to understand the astrological influences. You know, that's like a step too far for them in terms of navigating their life differently, because it feels to them like they're outsourcing to some unknown being or system that seems a little far out for them. How do you speak to that in terms of, you know, even connecting with people's guides and doing the client work for those who say, well, isn't that still giving your power away to someone else who tells you the tarot says you're supposed to do blah, blah, you know?
Well, even the tarot can change. I'll touch on astrology in just a second, but just the tarot, I've seen people, is your future, I like to say, psychics are like weathermen. We're weathermen. We're right half the time and still have the job. So, you know, they make a prediction, and then, like, you go to the Weather Channel app or whatever weather app when you're looking on your phone. It's like, what's the weather going to be like on Wednesday? And it's going to be 79. And it's like, you know, he's like, honey, it was 84. Y'all lied. You know, we're like that. It's because free will. There's factors there. So this is about recognizing that free will is the law of the universe. You can change the tarot. You can also use astrology to your advantage. So if you're familiar with you know, instruments and music, you know, we've got a lower octave C, and then you go 2 octaves up, and it's C. It's the note of C, but it's at a different, you know, pitch. It's higher versus lower. Same note, same frequency, different pitch, different energy. And that's what astrology is about. For those who are interested in understanding astrology from not so much a mathematical standpoint, but from a more intuitive standpoint as a form of storytelling and understanding archetypes and Jungian archetypes, I recommend reading Visionary Activist Astrology by Carolyn W. Casey. She's phenomenal.
Visionary,
phenomenal
say that again. Visionary Activist
Astrology by Caroline W. Casey. And she narrates the audiobook, and she has a very sexy phone voice. Very deep phone voice.
Okay.
And I love audiobooks, so I do a lot of driving. And with astrology, it's not so much that, you know, when you're born, the planets just beam down radio waves onto you that, you know, make your life predestined and you're fated to have horrible flip-ups or to, you know, be ugly or what have you. That's not how astrology works. Astrology is what Carl Jung would describe the macrocosm and the microcosm. Something born in the moment takes on the attributes of that moment. And astrology, like pretty much every other form of divination, divinatory tool, and what really sort of makes the metaphysical world go round is archetypes. Take Mars, for example. There's no such thing as a bad astrology or a bad tarot card, only bad tarot readers and bad astrologers, because it's not this is bad or this is good because you're casting judgment. Judgment isn't love-based. It's where does the energy need effort and where does it come through gracefully? You might be a great artist. You might struggle at math. Does that mean you're going to fail at math? No. It just means you need to put more effort towards it. Or where you've had karma in this life that you're trying to work towards and transmute proactively because you create your reality. So Mars, for example, is known as the warrior planet, and everybody has Mars in their chart. And just like everybody's got an astrology sign, most people know what their sun sign is. Mine is Aries. But you've got planets, and every single planet is in a sign. And then you've got your ascendant, which is the moment of your birth, the constellation on the horizon. Precession of the equinoxes aside, I'll get to that later if you're minding. But Mars is the warrior planet, and Mars represents in your chart where your temperament and your temper is, but also where your passions are. He can represent the divine masculine, but he can also represent toxic masculinity if you're utilizing him on a subconscious level versus being more proactive with him. So it's all about where you choose to put your energy and where you naturally let your energy go if you're not being proactive. So take my husband's chart, for example. My husband is about as Libra as they get. He has 5 planets in Libra. Dude is a chatty Cathy. He'll talk anybody up. He's a charmer. Never met a stranger. I joke he's a tomcat. Sagittarius ascendant. But he's super chill and complacent with where he's at. Like, he could sit there, and he loves playing video games. And I love that fact because it's better than football, in my humble opinion. No offense to those of you who love football. It's just not something I resonate with. For me, for example, that would drive me nuts because my energy is placed differently. I've got a lot more. He's got what we call a lot of conjunctions, which is a lot of amplification of energy, but it's also kind of conjunctions and trines, which are a lot of natural harmonies and, you know, natural amplifications, but that doesn't create necessarily a whole lot of drive. Whereas my chart, there's a lot of what we call squares, which some people be like, oh, that's a bad placement, or these planets struggle. And no, that just means that I'm a little bit more restless, or I need to be more proactive of integrating those energies. And the planet's dense in a way that allows us to utilize those archetypes, or where if we're being subconscious, it would be hard on those archetypes. Like the full moon, for example, there's a lot of oppositions, which is about balance. One thing opposes another. And that means that there's a struggle there, or a tug of war, if you're being subconscious about it, if you're not making a conscious effort to transmute the things that you're struggling with in those departments that those archetypes rule. So it's more about where can I be proactive about harmonizing, and the chart is more of a screenshot of the where your psyche sort of naturally likes to rest, or things that you've worked on already, or things that you can work on to help move forward in your life. And I've never seen a bad chart, only, you know, people who try and scare others, and I don't really see the function of giving a scary reading, only empowering one. So yeah, that's kind of astrology in a nutshell, and just take it very lightly. And, you know, if somebody's saying that this is something you can struggle with, there's always a higher octave and a lower octave. So Mars can be your temper, where you get mad and angry, or your passion, which is where you put your energy into and kind of lose yourself in a creative project for 5 hours and go like, where did the time go? That was also Mars. Or Venus, which is about, going and getting that Birkin bag, and then pretty new sunglasses, or creative arts, or, being a little bit indulgent with food. It's about where do we create things or where do we indulge ourselves. Jupiter is where do we expand, and can also be where do we expand too much or amplify unnecessary things. Saturn can be the great restrictor. I see Saturn as feminine, but a lot of modern astrologers see her as masculine, and Saturn is more of this is a great restrictor, an oppressor, because she's kind of like the Chronos sort of archetype, but it can also help us trim the hedges and help us get things back into shape and let the old things die away. Pluto is represented by a P and L combined, or the circle with the crucible, which is the thing beneath it, this little cup beneath it, and then below that is Pluto's trident, which is also an old symbol for fire. So it's fire cooking matter over a crucible. And Pluto is about change and transmutation, the phoenix rising from the ashes. Pluto is also very efficient. It's very intense. But it's also very efficient. So it's like a woman going from conception to birth in like a day, and it's very efficient, but it's also extremely intense. So it's about letting things die away that no longer serves us to make room for the new. And then Neptune's all about being dreamy, but also being foggy brained, being lied to, being confused. He's also the prophet. There's a prolific issue with psychics, and you can confirm with us, Marie. It's like there's a lot of psychics out there that are too Neptunian. It's like, well, he travel clouds, and just kind of sit there, and there's like people putting their butts out in the sun, letting them get sunlight, stuff like that. A little too up there. It's like, okay, we need to ground.
What's your name? Lorna from Harry Potter. Luna loved it. She was real, but they discounted her because she was kind of vague. But it turned out she was on point. At the end. But it seems to me
might
that
be a little weird, but she's accurate.
Right. Well, it seems to me like it all goes back to know thyself, as it says, right? And so if that means to know your planets and how you might be influenced, for some people that just isn't going to resonate for them in terms of like, how do I navigate? For others, they're like, oh, yes, this helps me kind of like make decisions differently. Same thing with your clairs, like your clairsentience. It's like these are part of you, and therefore your expansion of knowingness about, like you said, yourself. It's like all to the inside job of discovering and uncovering who you are. And it's like we have these arsenal of things that we may have rejected due to teachings or domestications, as Don Miguel Ruiz would say in the Four Agreements. And so to bring those things back into or expand our use of them, a lot of people are waking up and doing that now. Are your clients that you're seeing, are they folks who, if you're working with the Carolyns of the world who are definitely fully involved in their gifts, and then you're also working with newly awakened people who find you out to, help them as they're like noobs, if you will, in this situation. Do you have a balance of clients that you're seeing across this?
I'm seeing awakening on one level or another in just about every client. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty rapid. I think it's pretty appropriate with these sort of points. It's just very much there's a huge pivot point with, I think, that the world at large, that there's a lot of changes going on. And we're trying to ascend, I think, the planet at a sort of rapid pace. And I think that's why awakening is becoming a lot more normalized, which I think is fantastic. And just teaching people what I wished I would have learned back when I started this process of hearing stuff, and it's just understanding psychic hygiene. We we put on deodorant and change our underwear and hopefully like shower and brush our teeth, but we forget to do that metaphysically, and then we get metaphysically stank. So look at something like ground, shield, meditate, cut cords, you know, do your psychic hygiene every day, just like you brush your teeth. You brush your teeth, you can practice that.
Yes, I do that too. Yeah, because it's like you're ingesting the world. Our physical body is meant to be out digesting the world. We're breathing the air, we're feeling things, we're swimming basically in an energetic soup. So just like you prepare your corporal body to be out in the elements when you leave the house, you know, you're preparing and clothing or cleaning your energetic body in the same fashion, because we're just not one-dimensional beings, you know.
No. And it's easier because go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's easier because you walk out of the house with, you know, you can tell when you walk out of the house and you forgot your clothes, like, oh, crap, I'm naked. I don't want to go to Walmart like this. Let me go back inside. We don't think about that with metaphysical stuff. That's why it's kind of at the back of the brain, because it's not there in the physical reality. So it's got to be more of a mental habit. But practicing that really helps with being able to handle our energy better and handle, you know, being in crowds as empaths, because everybody's getting more sensitive. People are like, why can't I handle this being around this group or watching this TV show or going to Walmart like I used to? But honey, you're psychic, you know. And it's about recognizing and honoring that that's something that needs to be taken care of. Like, we don't look at the sun with our eyes. If it's a sunny day, we put on sunglasses, hopefully. And it's kind of the same concept, recognizing that your eyes, your spiritual eyes, are more sensitive, and honoring that sensitivity also is showing up for the universe in the sense of like, I honor this thing that you're allowing me to experience and the skill that I'm developing, and that shows the universe that you're willing to commit to it, so they can help you continue to let it grow. So it's imperative for spiritual growth to have psychic hygiene.
Yes, it is. We've actually got callers who have asked to come on to ask you a question. I'm going to put the first caller on. Those of you who are waiting, please know that we are not doing psychic readings today. So I know there's a couple people we had from New York call in. We've got like a multi-state thing happening, which is beautiful. But the first caller that we have here is ending in, see if I can get it on, 4481. Caller, 4481, you're on the Psychic Inside Show with Amy Cathryn. Welcome. Did you have a question?
Yeah, can I relate this to what you're saying?
Absolutely.
One of the things, like, you know how you said that we forget our psychic things, but we remember our physical things? I feel like society, when we say with rights comes responsibility, we want, you know, it's like we don't use our psyche, and we don't realize that basically with rights comes responsibility, but also with responsibilities comes rights. And I don't know if that we're using what God gave us when we do that, when we tell people with rights comes responsibility, but then when it comes to giving someone responsibilities with little or no rights, all of a sudden that's okay. I don't know if that's hitting the nail on the head or anything like that.
Well, in terms of like our natural state of being, right? I think that our main responsibility is to be who we were made to be, right? And so for a lot of people, when they, who they are is a person who sees spirit and hears voices, then that can be uncomfortable and cause the challenge, right? Where there would be people who would say, well, you're not, you know, honoring the Creator in some way by expressing these things. Would you say that that's kind of what people experience as well, Amy?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, if this doesn't come from God, or, I mean, this does come from God, but if I'm not honoring it, then I'm really not doing God's work, because if I wasn't supposed to be doing this, then God wouldn't make it so fulfilling and wouldn't allow me to be privy to the miracles that He works through me. And that, you know, there's a lot of organized religion that encourages us to go through that for God, and that resonates for some people fantastically, but not everybody resonates with that. And it, too, is very beautiful, like with the Christianity that I grew up with, that, you know, I was very familiar with the Bible, is that it's also a channeled document. It was inspired, and which means in spirit by God. So even the people who channeled that document were doing the same stuff we did. And it was a great sort of rule book through times with chaos, but there's a lot of places in it that I don't feel like resonates with current times. And I use my capacity for discernment on that, and I honor what I do from a love-based space, because anything of love is of God. And he who does not love it is not of God. So, you know, to paraphrase, beloved, let us love one another, 1 John 4:7 and 8. So I do things of love, and I try to do things outside of my ego and try my best to keep my ego in check. And that's what allows me to, I feel, do my best in doing God's work.
Being a responsible steward, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you're listening in this evening. Did you have any other comment?
Yeah, I noticed that what you were saying, people discourage you. People discourage other people when they say stuff like that. When they say, you know, tell you about the, you know, the stuff with the spirits. Because I was at because I've been using Blog Talk Radio for a long time. And I was at a Bible study, and I was basically getting somebody that was like that was, you know, getting my uncle and my mom and saying that they were saying I would be okay. But
you mean a medium? You were getting a mediumship reading from somebody where your uncle and your mom were in spirit?
Well, my uncle, my grandma. And then someone told me at the Bible study, well, maybe they were just, they just got a feeling from you, or maybe they were bad spirits trying to tell you what to do something harmful. And I'm like, that doesn't help me when you make comments like that. I didn't say it to them because I know that they didn't mean harm, but, you know, when they made that comment, it's like, if you see someone has anxiety, why make comments like that?
And it's just because they may not be ready for that. They may not be ready for that reading or for that message, just because all good things are love-based, and, you know, you're getting a huge confirmation with spirit when you're doing it from a love-based space, and then you're getting love-based messages. But not everybody's ready to hear those messages. Why, you know, I might get grandma trying to come to me and shake me up while I'm driving by, or, you know, driving my cart by her daughter or her granddaughter at the, you know, in the egg aisle at the grocery store. But I'm not going to just tell her granddaughter, like, hey, your grandma has a message for you. And it's because they may not be ready for that. Or, you know, I've lost plenty of friends who, you know, were really scared about this stuff, and they're not ready for that, and that's okay. We may resonate with different paths, and I'm not going to judge them for not being ready for or needing the energy that I have willing to exchange. The people that need to hear those messages will come to you. It's very much like the field of dreams. If you build it, they'll come, and it's about going, okay, I'm here. I'm a straw. I'm here for God to kind of flow through me. And everybody has a right to talk to God. Everybody has a God spark within them and has a right to connect with the Holy Divine. And our souls are immortal. And the soul, with the mediumship too, it was a huge sort of realization that I have yet to see a hell. I mean, a lot of people who preach fire and brimstone will, you know, want to say that, and I grew up thinking that, but I have yet to see it with the amount of people that I talked to who crossed over. And all I see is love on the other side, and that we're met with love, and we see the repercussions of our actions. But this is more about understanding that it's all based on just simple consciousness, and that there's that truth, and that truth and love are of the same thing. And when you see the truth of the afterlife, you're only met with love. And not everybody's ready to hear that. Not everybody's meant to hear that this lifetime. So don't get flustered if people don't really resonate with what you're saying. it's more about, the people who need to hear that message will come to you. So if that happens again, if you're getting that message from their loved ones who've transitioned, let the loved one go, you bring that person to me. If you want me to deliver this message, make it happen. And they will. And I've had to set boundaries. I usually do lock down pretty hard when I'm going out in public just because I can feel everything. And so I practice pretty strong psychic hygiene when I'm going out in the big groups like Dragon Con or Walmart or Kroger. And it's about making sure that, the right person will come to you. Spirit will give you the right person. So don't take it personally. They just weren't ready to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for adding to the conversation this evening, sir. I've had to put you back through onto the listening line, but it's really key because also one of the things that you're talking about, or what I hear you saying, is also discernment, like from within yourself, rather than like what is true, what is the feeling of this message when somebody said, oh, that's just a bad spirit, versus how you might have felt when you first got the message from your uncle and your grandmother, which was actually high vibrational as it was intended. And in your heart of hearts, generally, people, there's a feeling and a knowing when you've received something that is true beyond a logical explanation. And so, the exercises of trusting that there is a layer of things happening that we may not have been aware of, and trusting the messages that are given to you versus the fear frequency. It's an exercise that we're all actively doing. But like you went to a psychic development course here in Atlanta. For those who are listening outside in other areas, Atlanta really is a wonderful place for the metaphysically minded, right? So we have psychic fairs that have been going on for 30 years, like Gloria Parker's Big Psychic Fair. She's been on the show before, and we've talked about that. Carl Woodall's school, which is where you went to your classes, is like a long time, probably 20 plus years. Carl's been teaching people how to work with their gifts and abilities. Can you speak to like the acquisition of education about being in your gifts?
And I want to caveat this with, not everybody's meant to take a class. I mean, taking the class isn't an elite. I don't want to be elitist and like, oh, you must take a class to qualify to be a psychic. Like, and look at all those classes beneath us. That's not how this works. And if you resonate with this class, then take the class. And not everybody resonates with the teacher as well. So some teachers are going to be really great, and you're just like, some people are going to, like Carl Whittle's thebomb.com. I love Carl Whittle. Some people are like, I didn't get much from him. It's because everybody's frequency is different. So do your research. If resonating with a class, if the class is something you're drawn to do, then do your research, see if you can get a picture, or see if if you can kind of stalk the instructor on Instagram, or see if they got videos or stuff coming out, and see if that's somebody just like, yeah, I think that I really jive with what they're saying, or with what their vibe of the pictures that I'm looking at. So that's relevant, because that's your spirit guides, and that's your intuition saying that you're going to get the most out of that class. The reason I took the class, there's a lot in that class I already knew naturally, a lot that it validated. For me, it felt like it was my personal permission slip to go, okay, I took this class, so I feel like I have something under my belt to help me to do this, just because that's just how I'm personally wired. And namely, I took that class was for the mediumship, because I grew up with so much fear surrounding that. And because I grew up Southern Pentecostal. We weren't the snake handling, don't cut your hair Pentecostal, but we were jumping over pews and speaking in tongues. So there's a lot of that craziness in the middle of like nowhere, Alabama. So some people, if like they're from Alabama, say it's not nowhere. It's like it's outside Birmingham, so it's not really anywhere in particular. Rural, yeah, rural, as they say over there, as I say in my Southern accent. So it really helped, and it helped me understand that mediumship is not scary when you know how to treat it with respect and to do your lockdown, do your, secure your metaphysical area, then you're only allowing love-based energy in. Just like a doctor will, before he does heart bypass surgery, is going to go wash his hands and put on his latex gloves and putting on his doctor's, mask so he's not breathing germs into somebody's aorta or exchanging germs with somebody. It's similar to that. It's making sure that the energy of the area is sterilized. So that really helped me safeguard and has protected me and really helped validate that. And then I wanted to understand shamanism better because I got into the angelic realms. I felt drawn to take shamanism course, and that helped me understand the importance of the earth-based realms and spirit totems, and going deeper into doing shadow work and deeper into, shamanic healing sessions, and then doing astrology and understanding how we can benefit from looking at the planets as a map and as, recommendations and guidelines. And I love continual learning with this stuff, and me immediately being able to educate and share that knowledge with clients. I'm not just going to say, this is what's happening. We're going to educate them about what that card means or what that planet means, and help empower them on that they're actually in control and that they're smart enough to understand this, that this isn't something that's out of their control or outside of their knowledge or abilities, that it's just learning, and teachers or students.
Well, and talking about, how the caller talked about like the responsibilities, one thing that I do notice about people who have done more of a programmatic development, there has been a component that talks about, just like for social workers, there's kind of like a code of ethics. For lawyers, there's a code of ethics and practice. What I'm finding is that, well, it's an anecdotal, of course. I don't have any statistics to back it up. But for people who went through a more structured, there's usually a component, about clearing your energy, protecting yourself, and then about, the ethics of privacy and the conversation, and how to not diagnose, you're not the physician therapist, like being in your appropriate space in the dynamic. And what I'm seeing now on like many people are tapped into and awakening their gifts, and you'll look at their YouTube channels and they're not doing any kind of visible indication of their alignment or what they're opening for. And they'll be reading for celebrities or third parties, right? Like you'll see, I'm doing a reading. It's kind of like one thing to do an astrological chart, because charts are kind of like public record, like your license plate. But it's different to tap in and then offer a psychic reading, or what's he thinking, what's she thinking or doing. I see those titles come through my feeds all the time. And I'll see people with tens of thousands of subscribers who are basically in the transaction of third-party reading. Like, what's the tea? What's the scoop? What's the gossip? What's they're doing? What's their lover doing? And it's very interesting, because on the one hand, you're very happy that people are opening to gifts and having these conversations with spirit, but the responsibilities part, as he said, and the ethics part of it, it gets a little, to me, it's not muddy. It's clearly wrong, but for others, it might be a muddy area for them. Like, how do you speak to the balance of that in terms of opening and exploring on your own, and what that's brought us to in terms of people who are then giving other people psychic advice from that space?
Ma'am, I could talk to you all evening about this. Oh, Lordy. Okay. So when it comes to psychic development, ethics are imperative. We don't have a psychic police. It's just to go, whoop, whoop, oh my gosh, you were giving third-party information, or whoop, whoop, you get a $50 fine for doing that. We don't have that. And we, unfortunately, this has been going and spreading tremendously and rapidly. And then we got witch talk, TikTok psychics, that are, I read a book, and then therefore, they're all knowing on the situation, and that's not necessarily how this works. It's more about the practice and getting deeper into your development with your guides and taking the craft itself a lot more seriously and keeping the ego in check. And I can't stop the used car salesman from selling the lemons. Mm-hmm. I can't stop them from doing that, but I can educate the clients that do come to me and educate the students that do come to me on what's right and wrong and encourage them to spread that. And I'm going to do that with the best that I can and with my voice. And, I wrote a blog for the 10 Psychic Commandments, and I also wrote a blog very recently on, common psychic mistakes. And a lot of the psychic mistakes that I see that are the most rampant are delivering third-party information. And unfortunately, that's never beneficial to anybody. And it doesn't really allow the person to grow. And it's just kind of being a busybody, being nosy, and that it's invasive. And we really need standards in this field. And so that's why I kind of wrote with great passion, my blog, the 10 Psychic Commandments is thou shalt not scare clients, which is we don't need to give a scary reading because that's fear-based. It's not love-based. Assuming that the client needs to be shocked is a place of judgment. It's not coming from a place of spirit. The spirit knows exactly what they need to hear, and that we can transmute anything coming. I'm not going to tell a client, oh my gosh, if I see their daughter, this has happened. I saw a client, his daughter. I also saw a fender bender with a silver car, and I was and it felt like their daughter was does your child drive a silver car? And yeah, I said, just tell your child to drive more slowly, to plan ahead with their driving. She's yeah, she does drive a little fast. It's yeah, encourage her to drive with more time and to, maybe even take some driving defensively classes, some defensive driving classes, things like that. I saw something when I was doing Reiki on somebody, something physical with the heart. Archangel Raphael came to me and was there's something physical going on with their heart. Do you think I said that? No. I was when's the last time did you get a checkup with your doctor? And I was have you been having some stress with your heart lately? Yeah, I've got palpitations. Okay. Well, you've also under a lot of stress lately. Let's do some self-care, go get a checkup, make sure that your heart's doing okay, give it some TLC. Big difference in delivery, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's also, that third-party information, which is the second thing. People don't need to know. There's no reason to know that third-party information. Why do we need to know that person's business? I had this one client that I fired, and it's important that we as psychics do fire clients that are unethical because you get the cuckoos. You get the cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs people sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I was one lady, she came in with a folder. And I was thinking, yay, I could use psychometry on people who cross over. This is not that. It was not that at all. And she came in, and she had that busybody sort of mousy vibe about her. And she's like, can I bring a folder? I'm sure. Yay, we're going to do mediumship. Nope. Is a folder full of pictures of her family members that don't talk to her, asking what's going on with this person, or this person's got blah blah blah. I was maybe you should do some Reiki, or to encourage them to get some Reiki, encourage them to talk to their doctor. And I kept telling her I don't do third party information, and then she pulls up this picture of this guy with this. The best way I can describe it is a porn stash, and she goes, "What can you tell me about this guy?" And I was why is gossiping about him going to help you with your business? And she's she almost clutched her pearls, and it's just that's none of your business. And I was I don't think this will work out. That's great, you're fired. Go get a refund. Don't come back. And it's it's never helped clients. And a lot of psychics make the mistake of going, oh, if I tell them about that person, then it's validating my gift, and I'm telling them what they need to know. But the client doesn't actually, just because the client asked the question, doesn't mean that it serves their highest good for you to pry into that information and answer it. So there comes, there comes that word discernment again of going, okay, is this what serves their highest good? Guys, please show me what this person needs to know about this situation. It's well, they're assuming that their happiness correlates with that person being in their life. So they're outwardly objectifying their happiness, so therefore they're never going to be happy because they keep assuming that person is going to make them happy, or that situation, or that resolve. Whereas they haven't been working on where they have where they need to bring acceptance into their heart. What Eckhart Tolle talks about in The Power of Now and A New Earth. where it's just about dissolving that illusion of separateness and surrendering to acceptance. It doesn't mean complacency. It just means, where can I be radically accepting of the present moment? And where have I allowed my ego to be unaccepting of that? And then there's also the not telling clients they're cursed. I mean, I've had to do a lot of cleanup with this, and I think my record was $2,000. Somebody is the highest that somebody said I could remove a curse for you, and a lot of that comes out of New Orleans too. There's a lot of people who are like, "Oh, you're cursed. Let me remove that for $2,000. Oh, by the way, it's on a discount. I'll only, charge $1,500. I'm just so happy running a 30% or 25% discount this month." It's like BS, And it's like, no. The problem with that is people can't discern, as psychics, they think somebody's cursed when they can't discern between, they just had a tiff with their sister and their sister's thinking negatively about them and sending them those negative telepathic bullets, or if that person was in a funk, or if that person has an aura tear, or if that person had a really stressful day at work, or if that person was in a political argument with somebody on Facebook, or if it was an actual curse, which is very extremely rare. And even then, that person can get rid of it themselves, because free will, we create our universe, and we're in power and control of that. So there's a lot of kind of just that's very scammy to me. And then the fourth one is like not needing to tell the client that they need to come back for services. And I tell clients they need to wait a minimum 30 days if they want a reading. They don't need to ever come back. Nobody needs a reading. You don't come to Earth with like, gotta get my fix or I'm going to die. Nobody needs a reading. We get readings for encouragement and clarity, but it's not the end of the world if nobody ever gets a reading throughout their entire life. People live just fine. So it's recognizing that people can get addicted to readings, because it's like being on Facebook. People are addicted to social media. It's like a dopamine hit. There's people get addicted to readings, and that's why I'm just like, don't come back. Minimum 30 days. And if they keep coming back 30 days on the dot, I'm going to push it out farther until I tell the client, okay, I'm going to have to fire you, because I'd rather not have that client and do my part in stopping that than seeing that client addicted to readings. Or if trying to deliver advice which is the other one, which is trying, I think that's number 5, which is pretending I'm a therapist or pretending I'm a doctor. And it's like, I've had somebody told me that, somebody's going to die from throat cancer. And it's just like such a low vibrating statement. And it's like they're slapping in the face of free will, other factors, just a number of stuff to just come out and say something so negative and inaccurate. We're not doctors. Like, I'm not an educated doctor, so why would I diagnose somebody? There's just too many people out there who pretend to be doctors or lawyers and say you should divorce your husband, or you should do this or that, or you've got this problem, and not leaving it to the mental health professionals or the health professionals. I myself be a therapist. He knows I'm a psychic. We both think it's awesome. I'm giving readings to licensed clinical social workers and therapists, and even psychotherapists I've given readings to. There's a lot more opening up in this field than there used to be. I tell clients, like, if everybody saw a therapist, like every single person in this world saw a therapist for 3 times, like had 3 sessions with a therapist, we'd be in world peace by now. Everybody's mommy daddy problems, yes. Everybody's mommy daddy problems will be gone. Yeah.
We would definitely
another one is just like, and it's about honoring the client's privacy. Like, I'm an ordained minister, so this is a consultation by an ordained minister. I don't gossip. I don't name drop. I will tell you, for an example, like he or she, but I'm not going to tell you what that client looked like and what their name was. And I'm not going to gatekeep either. That's not going to help. Educating people and encouraging them to grow in their individual spiritual craft is the best thing. So, like, people who gatekeep and people who go, you have to take my class for $1,000 in order to progress on your spirituality at all, is just a scam artist. And always making sure that the service is the priority, that, we've got to honor that we are of service to humankind. And respect this craft, and respect that we're here for the client first. Like, I can't think about the money first. I got to trust that the universe pays my bills.
It's so interesting because, it's like the goal of your work is to not have the client, right? Like, so it's like you're bringing in a client,
it really is.
the goal is to not then have a client, and that's very unique. You spoke about, the female entrepreneur and the driven, kind of thing when we have a professional service related business, and yet balancing, as you said, you're there for spirit, not for man. So like trusting that, okay, the people who need to come to you will come to you, and that you will be able to sustain your independence from the matrix, if you will, in terms of going back to a profession, and yet wanting to not create a codependency that is economically beneficial to you. That's really an interesting intersection for a lot of people. I guess the doctor doesn't really want to see you. Ideally, a doctor doesn't want to keep seeing you. They want to get you together and put you out the door and not have you come back. But a lot of our system of economics is based on repeatability factor, and to somehow create a dynamic of dependency. And you're very clearly saying that you are not going to foster dependency. You will disconnect and push the birdie out of the nest.
Yeah. And I give them homework, but never with the expectation that they need to come back for reading. It's more of a directional thing, because I'm not their therapist. I'm not there to kind of be on their ass, excuse my French, to do this. And I can only give them that direction. I could lead the horse to water, but that's my ego saying that I've got to watch them drink. I'm just here to deliver the message. I'm not necessarily privileged to see the results, and that I've got to trust that that's the universe's job. And I don't see that in every reading. I see clients walk away and they feel disgruntled or upset, and it's like, I can't control that. This was a spiritual message. This is from spirit, and spirit gave them this, and I got to trust that person needed to hear it. And sometimes they'll come back and be like, I needed to hear that, or that was very validating, or that person that we didn't know that came through, I didn't know what you were talking about, that turned out to be my husband's grandmother or whatever. So I've got to trust that was just, that message was meant for them, and let spirit do their job. And I'm just there to be as present and as humble as possible for that. Because if my ego gets in the way, it's really going to F things up, and it's going to give them a lower vibrating reading. And this is a hard field to be in, because it requires so much trust in something that we were trained the opposite to believe in. We were trained from school, from the get-go, to be good followers, to be good workers, and to follow directions really well, and to not necessarily think critically, just to follow orders and to follow the rote learning method. And when you are an entrepreneur or a small business owner, you've kind of got to have that instinct, that business sense, all on your own. And you've got to make those choices based on your own discernment and your own risk and your own intuition. So it's really weird, because I was a marketing manager. I was an art director. I had the titles, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of weird how I don't do marketing. I think it's hilarious. It's like, I don't market. People come to me. People tell people, and they come to me. I think I've spent a total of $5 on marketing total for since my business started. And there's a business I pay bills on. I pay my taxes. I got my business license. I got my DBA. I got all that, all the LegalZoom, stuff and whatnot. And I try to, cross my T's and dot my I's with this. I take it seriously. And I know that society as a whole isn't quite ready for that. But what I can do to make it ready as best as I can for my little speck of consciousness in this universe is by setting those basic sort of code of ethics. And if I can spread that out, and that other, psychics and other teachers continue to spread that out, then this is going to have a field that has standards, and that in the very least, what I hope is that most clients will know when to discern when a psychic is doing something ethically or not. And I think that that's possible in this world, especially with everybody waking up.
Oh, absolutely. And, when you go into, like one of my guests, Disha, she is a Vedic astrologer. And what she experienced culturally is that, when a child is born within 3 days, they go to the priestly order of astrologers who cast the child's chart, and there's no question about the legitimacy of it, the integrity of it. It's part of just the way of being that it is accepted, that this divination is given to you for the helping you to raise your child and the child to become the fullest of their being. I think that we are moving towards that in the more Eurocentric cultures. We're moving back into where, just like a child is baptized, in the Christian church, I think that we are going to be normalizing. Certainly these young kids are doing some, they're already reading their charts with the little apps on their phone. So they're kind of like leapfrogging into a normalcy that is still challenging those of us in the generations, that have preceded them, that are still living on the planet at this time. And that's part of the shift that's so exciting. Now, when people want to work with you, so like what kinds of services are you offering?
I offer psychic mediumship services and also astrological services through my website at amycathryn.com, and that's amycathryn.com. And I'm also I do in-person readings at Forever and a Day, and it's a New Age shop in Woodstock, Georgia, and they have a website called foreverandaday.biz. And you can also sign up for my classes there. I teach tarot classes. I'm a Reiki Master. I'm an Usui and Central Reiki Master, and I co-teach Reiki classes with the beautiful Heather Lynn Rudd, and she's also a professional nurse, so it's a combination of allopathic and homeopathic, and understanding both the scientific and medical aspects of Reiki, because Reiki is becoming more increasingly popular in hospitals these days, especially in the New England area, and that's growing. And so she, as a nurse, teaches people from that allopathic technical standpoint, and it's a mini sort of psychic development class to help you understand the details of how you receive information. We talked about empathy. Not everybody's an empath. Some people are more empathic or more clairsentient than others. Other people are more clairaudient, et cetera, et cetera. We talk about that, and I've got a psychic development class underway that's going to be probably launching in July of 2022. And all of that's under something called the Phoenix System for Psychic Development. All these classes are under that. It's a trademark class, and they're all copyrighted. And it's to sort of bring that brand and that brand as a standard for psychic development and ethics out there.
And this is your creation, correct? You said?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful.
My creation.
Beautiful.
And I do astrology readings online as well, so I'll cast a chart. And I also like to channel the astrology, so I don't just get into the degrees and the technical stuff. I like to kind of ask their guides, well, why did the soul choose this? Like, what's working here? Where's where they're struggling? Like, why is this happening this way? And it's all recorded. And then I give them a PDF of everything and all that stuff. I like to document the readings as best I can, so the client walks away with as much knowledge in hand so they can go off and do their own research. So I do all that. But yeah, you can.
Do you teach anything on? Are you teaching anything on channeling, or is it just included in your development?
That's actually in the tarot classes and in the Reiki classes a little bit. And also in the upcoming psychic development classes, I'll be teaching the channeling and channeling your guides and angels. And all of that is, you can also visit foreverandaday.biz to check out all that stuff. I'm also teaching a psychic self-defense class in October. Is the weekend before Halloween. I'm teaching that. And then October 30th, I am doing a mediumship gallery. I do those once a year. That's also at Forever and a Day. So you can stalk my website and stalk Forever and a Day and, sign up through there if you're interested in that. And I also have a TikTok. So I have blog, I have TikTok. I've also got a newsletter. And that if people are wanting free readings, I do give free readings through my newsletter. So if you sign up for my newsletter, I give free monthly readings that are channeled to my newsletter subscribers only, and also free astrology reports for the next upcoming month and discounts, because I'm also a I'm a classically trained fine artist. I got a degree in fine art with a concentration in graphic design and a minor in art history from a watercolorist. And I sell prints of all that stuff and animal totems on my website. So, yeah, stalk me.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I hadn't seen that. That's cool. So, like a Jill of all trades, if you will, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, one thing that I do love, I'm not on TikTok, but I see your things that come over from TikTok over into Instagram. And from what I've seen, there's like really a burgeoning, like, content area that deals with readings and psychic stuff and all this woo-woo things that we love has really found a home there on TikTok. And I know that the teachings that you talked about, your blog posts and the ethical things are things that I saw cross-posted from there. It really is wonderful to go to somewhere and have content that is free, like when they say almost personal reading. It really, if you're guided to go hear something or it comes across, then observe it and give it the opportunity to speak to you in that moment. And as they always say, if it resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, let it flow on by. But you are definitely producing like almost daily, I think, different things across your channels that are certainly not at a cost to anyone.
Oh, yeah, and I love educating people on spirituality. I found that TikTok was really helpful because I did have a YouTube channel. I still have it up with some of the old weekly readings and some of the other things that I did for predictions and whatnot. And what I found was that it was a little too time-consuming for me. But yeah, I do understand video editing and animation and all that, but I just don't want to sit there for hours and calling that. And TikTok is very accessible. It's very quick. I feel like that sort of resonates with a lot of what Gen Z and millennials are wanting these days. And it's like this sort of quick information in 3 minutes or less. And it's also helped me be able to sort of form my words and become more accessible in that regard and explaining these things. Because there's a lot of BS out there on TikTok especially. And it's just like people freaking out about moldavite, thinking moldavite's going to make their parents die or something. And that's not true.
Oh.
That's not how this works. The TikTok's on that. And it's, the right people can go watch that and know what that is, what they don't tell you about spirituality or, common psychic mistakes and how to spot those sort of things. And just it's about educating what spirituality really is versus just, I don't want to do the woo-woo fluff. There's enough of that out there. And there's plenty of people out there doing readings too, which is great. It's just, make sure that they're not the kind of person like, let me tell you something. This is what your friend's thinking about you. It's like, that's not a real reading. That's somebody tapping into their ego. The love-based messages are going to be more empowering and be like, this is the message you need to know for today. Keep going, or it's time to take a break, or, when is the last time you were still and you need to meditate, or, when do you need to detox, or, things like that, or go, don't take a salt bath, stuff like that. It's not going to be gossipy.
So what's your TikTok handle there? Is it is there
it's
a dot
also
or
the Amy Cathryn? The Amy Cathryn.
Okay.
The one and only.
Okay. We're going to have those links in the show notes, of course, for people who want to click through. I'm not ready to dive into TikTok. I'll catch it when I pop into little things. I love it, but I'm afraid of myself that I'll get stuck in the rabbit hole and, spend hours scrolling all the awesome content because I sure do get some things over. But
it's a black hole.
Yeah, it can be. It can be. So for the person who might be in this moment, like that we're in right now, experiencing something very different, such as seeing a visible form, like the veil is thin right now, and people are kind of having some challenging experiences. So if a person were to say, oh my gosh, I think there was an angel talking to me when I was sitting in the bathtub yesterday, and I saw a figure that's, but as I tried to see who it was, like I couldn't get a sense of it. Like for people who are beginning to experience things like that, what would be your advice to that person?
Well, when it comes to angels, my sheep know my voice. That's kind of my go-to. You know it's an angel. Reading books to help encourage your discernment, and, you know, there's that word again, understanding the difference between angelic messages versus static. And I know she gets a lot of flack because she went turbo Christian after she got baptized, but Doreen Virtue came out with some pretty dope books before that happened. And How to Hear Your Angels by Doreen Virtue is a pretty awesome book. I myself read it and got a lot of beautiful angelic messages while I was reading that book, and that's going to help you become more intimately involved with your angels and understanding what they sound like. It does take practice. This is just something that takes practice. You don't go to the gym and get pecs overnight. Otherwise, everybody has pecs. You know, it's just, you got to kind of have that discipline to practice every day and go and do it, even when you're not feeling up to it. You know, even if it's the minimum viable effort, which is like, you know, for example, on a spiritual or on a physical level, that might not be going to the gym. It might just be 10 minutes of stretching. But from a metaphysical stance, it's better to do something versus nothing. And I highly recommend, you know, reading that book. Also, Infinite Quest by John Edwards is an excellent book that sets some really good ground rules on ethics, do's and don'ts, and connecting to your guides and angels, and meditations on doing so if people are willing to sort of put forth the effort that the courses and the actions in that book say to do. But everybody has guides. Everybody has at least 2 guardian angels. Felt like an angel, if you felt like it was an angel to your core and you saw something, then that was an angel. And that was your angels letting you know that they love you and that they're there with you and that you're not alone and that you're worth something, that you're enough. And you've got special gifts in this world and that you need to work on that, and they're asking you to work with them more. And angels make you feel at peace, especially if you felt in that moment this sense of peace, this sense of completion or oneness, this sense of like that felt right, then that was your angels talking to you, because that's what angels feel like. But yeah, that definitely sounds like it was angelic, especially if it was peaceful. Like, it might have been startling, like, oh crap, there's an angel in my bathtub, but it was a place of love, and it was in a place of like, wow, I feel so whole, I feel so much at oneness, I feel like I've got hope. Kind of like when you get coffee from Starbucks and you got hope for 10 minutes after you've drank that coffee. Yeah, that was an angel.
Yes. Oh, yes. Hope for coffee. Well, and the discernment, it keeps coming back to discernment, right? It's like, okay, if you feel not comfortable with whatever, we don't have to allow it. Whatever it is, even if it is an angelic or a high vibrational being, we may be comfortable at a level, but our mind may be very discomforted by that, and that is okay too. So just be with yourself and feel it out, and then seek out a person who you trust to help you work through your connection. I definitely, will be referring people to you for mediumship. I don't, I connect up and go down, but I don't necessarily deal with people's deceased loved ones in the ancestral type of plane personally. And when I do, it's generally, it's not accidental. It's like I'll begin giving the message and then I'll realize, oh, this is their sister, but it's, again, not something that I choose to function as. And I've asked for that then with my guides to say, I will be a message deliverer, but I would prefer to deal with, and there's no judgment from the angelic or the higher realms about us being where we are with our gifts, as long as we're not rejecting ourselves. Saying no is not necessarily rejection to the connection, because we can always say yes to that being when we're comfortable, but saying no to like ourselves, saying we shut down our clairaudience or we shut down our empathy or our clairvoyance, eventually we will have to re-engage in some kind of way, because it truly is like cutting off our arm or cutting off our nose and we spite our face without even realizing that we've limited ourselves by cutting that energy back.
And that you're absolutely right. And as long as the reader is being true to themselves and doing what they feel comfortable with, like I don't care if they read tarot cards forwards, backwards, or sideways, or you know, snort sugar. It's like, okay, now I'm in my guide space. I'm gonna just like eat this fun dip, or stick this fun dip stick up my nose. I don't care as long as they're like channeling from a place that they're comfortable with. It's just the ethics that I'm just like, that's the base rules, because that's what's right and wrong. The technique and what they offer as far as services, that's up to the psychic and up to the intuitive, as long as they're doing it from a place where they're comfortable and being honest with themselves and like yourself going like, this is not something I'm comfortable with, and I'm not going to do that because I'm not comfortable with it, and being honest with themselves, that's a good psychic. That's somebody who understands and is doing what they need to do.
Right. You don't say I'm a ear, nose, and throat specialist and have a pregnant woman sitting in your office.
Yeah.
There might be a little challenge there, right? Some fundamentals.
Yeah. Ear, nose, and throat gynecologist. What?
Right. But it's so interesting. I really have appreciated our conversations this evening because you speak with the proficiency and you're like fully involved, as you said, a lifelong learner. I'm sure if I talk to you again in a year, you'll be like, well, I picked this up and I picked that up and then I did this and then I launched my own class and they're teaching because of that constant. We're going quantum is what I kind of say. Like we're bringing all these things into our gumbo, and it's adding spices and layers of complexity, but that's really who we are as super complex beings operating. And to operate at your fullest capacity, you keep expanding, yourself, because there's no limit to what we can become and how connected to spirit we can be. And I can see you like just like gangbusters, like I'm going to go wherever it is. I'm going to do it because shaman, psychic, healer, teacher, astrologer, graphic designer, cosplay. You are definitely, one thing that I loved was you were out at Dragon Con, which is just an experience. So you're out there with all the folks who are enjoying themselves. I see the Dragon Con as like almost like one big psychic fair that people just don't realize. They're kind of channeling their alter selves.
That was like 80,000 people pre-COVID back in 2019, and that was I had to put on my psychic like armor on, like full metal psychic armor, because it's pretty crazy. But there are people who, and I've got close friends, and my husband included in this. It's like they feel like it's Christmas. They're living with their family. Like they're able to come out and be authentic. And some people that's like in that cosplay, that's in that zone, that there is a huge overlap between creativity and intuition. Everybody that's ever been creative, so if you picked up a brush, if you've played a musical instrument, if you've sung, if you've written something creatively for fun, you've got that intuitive connection. It comes from the same place as when I give readings. And it's, trusting that to kind of flow through you. And there was a surprising amount of artists at Dragon Con that I met that were actually in the middle of creating a tarot card deck. And what was funny is I met these two separate artists in two different areas of Dragon Con. One was over by the comic artist alley, and the other one was actually in the art gallery, in the two completely different buildings in Dragon Con. And they both were like, this is very intense working on this tarot deck, and I can only create one drawing a month. And it's just like, it was a lot of energy, and they were both experiencing psychic awakening from creating that tarot deck as full-time artists in a completely different field. I just thought that was mind-blowing.
That's amazing. I love it because to me it's like we're all, when you walk through somewhere like Dragon Con where everybody's in, alien future past forms, not, it's everything that we've seen in science fiction and fantasy, and some things that people create out of their imagination. It's like we're channeling in our galactic selves at any particular point in time. And I just love it because it's like being in the bar in a Star Trek movie or Star Wars movie where all the beings are gathered around. And it's like at a fundamental level, I know they're channeling like their Pleiadian self and don't even realize why they love this, this particular way of presenting. So things like that, and seeing it grow in popularity, prior to pandemic, where Comic-Con and Dragon Con were just like growing by hundreds of thousands of people, really. 2018, 2019, the parade for Dragon Con was ridiculous. And the number of people in the hotels, I worked down there in that complex, and it was like just madness that weekend of Dragon Con. But it shows the awakening of consciousness to where that is also more mainstream now than it is 25 years ago when it was at a little dusty hotel called the Castlegate. It's normalized, just like psychic stuff is now normalizing. Tarot apps and oracle card apps sell like gangbusters in the app stores. Astrology apps are on all people's phones. So there is this flowering of consciousness that represents, and even with you and your business, an uptick of clients. And, it's all, to me, it makes me super happy. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's beautiful that it's normalized, because like this was a completely different landscape in the 90s, and it was a completely different landscape 20 years before that. It was practically a desert. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of self-help spiritual books, and it just sort of started exploding. And then now you have all these different people out there, and it's so much more accessible, and you feel like you're not going crazy. Like, when I was a kid, there was only a handful of, like, you remember, GeoCities and Angel Fire websites. Talk about that. It's like all the sparkles and random music playing. It's like, what is this LSD chaos?
Right.
And, and crazy witch spells. I was like, I don't know. Am I going to go to hell for looking at this webpage? I remember I started thinking that when I started trying to, like, figure this stuff out. And it was, now it's just like, my goal is to give people that accessibility that I didn't have. And that, no, you're not going crazy if you use that discernment and going, I have an individual channeled relationship with divine source. Does this resonate for me or not? I don't say that's good or that's bad. I try to delete that as much as possible from my vocabulary. And I'm so, does this resonate? Does this not resonate? Am I drawn to this? Am I not drawn to this? Just because I'm allergic to tobacco doesn't mean that I'm going to say, oh, tobacco smokers are evil. No. I don't resonate with that. And, the same thing for anything that a potential client would do. It's just important that they use that discernment. And if you're resonating with something in a book, great. If you don't, chuck that part out or ignore that part. And that's how you're really going to develop your personal relationship with spirit, by being honest with yourself and letting spirit itself be your guide. Because people down here, they seek too many teachers, or they keep, fixating on teachers. And I've made the mistake of just looking up to people like too much and not using my own discernment of going, they like this, or they said I should do this, and that's just based on their perception of reality. We got to kind of pick out what's from source that we needed to hear in that exchange, and what isn't. And I tell that to just about every client that sits down, is like, use your discernment. So if I say something that resonates, if it feels good, if it makes you feel expansive, keep it. If I say something that makes your gut like clench, or you feel then chuck it. That's what I like to say. And people do that, then they keep their power in their readings, which is the key, is empowerment.
Absolutely. Well, this conversation has certainly been enlightening, and I think it is empowering for people to hear us even having a conversation like this is normal conversation in my reality. For other people who might stumble across it, it might be a far leap, but to hear stories like yours and to have you talk in a transparent way about your journey, your philosophies, your value system, and the work that you are doing as a full-time in service to others, professional in the psychic world, is an important thing that needs to be shared. And I'm just so grateful that you took the time out to come and have this conversation with me this evening.
Thank you for inviting me. It was
Absolutely.
so wonderful to have a conversation with you this evening. This was so much fun.
Oh, I know. I know, right? But so this has been a great conversation, and we will definitely have you on for one of the other shows that I have, Conversational Elevation with the Viberarian and Power Tools for Woke Folk. So those are different shows where we talk about ways that you can be in your empowered life, and so I think you would have some things to be able to share for that show. So those will be back on in the fall, later this fall, for those of you that are subscribed to my channels. But the Psychic Inside Show, we're here every Tuesday, and I do have a guest, another amazing guest to speak with next week, and so we will be back at 8. I'll have these shows up for you in the next couple of days on YouTube, and of course they'll be available shortly on iTunes and Amazon. For everyone who was on the phone line this evening listening, we had quite a full bank of callers who were listening in. And for those of you who are looking for a reading, you can definitely contact Amy directly through the information that she has been providing. And check her out on TikTok and Instagram. Sign up for that newsletter, and you can receive some supplemental freebies. Everybody loves freebies. But Amy, thank you so much for your time this evening.
You're very welcome.
And for all of you, know that this week I wish for you that your life is just so exploded with blessings that they just burst out from you and shower down on the world around you, blessing others as you expand in joy. Know that the light in me absolutely honors and loves the light in you. Namaste.